I'm thinking about this team and this ride, and it's amazing that the team that was 9-5 is now one of the hottest teams in the country. I think a trendy pick to potentially win a national title and playing as well as anybody. As someone who's been on great teams who have played great at the end of the year, like, what do you see with this team right now?
A lot of confidence. I think that's the biggest thing, where this team probably lacked that maybe even as early as the beginning of the year, but for sure in the last couple of years. And now these guys believe that they can win. And when you believe you can win, you're going to pull out some victories. And then obviously you got Io, who you have all the confidence in the world. And I was very fortunate to play, with a couple of really dynamic players as well. And, obviously Frank Williams played, 3 years with him. And you just knew that he was going to find a way to win a ball game for you. And it made everybody else more confident. So I see that in this group that, hey, if we can get it to the end, we're going to have Io there. He's going to close it out for us. And, guys play with a lot of confidence that way, and knowing that you've got a closer, and then you start winning these close games. I say, how do you get confidence without getting, before you start winning games? And now they're winning games. So now they've got that confidence. The Ohio State game's a game that they lose probably middle of the year. And for sure, the last couple of years, they don't get stops down the stretch. They don't make big plays down the stretch, and they were able to do that.
What stood out most about that win? Because it did feel like, Sean, they stole victory from the jaws of defeat there.
Yeah, we're seeing a recurring theme here of defense. And I thought Michigan and Wisconsin were 40 minutes of defense. And then you look at Ohio State, you hold them scoreless for the last several minutes of that game. And that's what gets it done, especially on the road. They're getting after it. It's fun to watch. They're not doing anything crazy or anything, that you're looking at and saying, well, this is why it is. They're just getting into guys. They're not giving up free open looks. They're making everything difficult. And defensively, they're closing out games right now. And I think that's been really impressive with this group, is how much they've gotten after on the defensive end.
It didn't feel like Io needed much to get adjusted back to the game. What did you see from him?
Yeah, I mean, incredible. You talk about taking 10 days off or 2 weeks off, whatever it was. And what was he able to do even physically in that time? A lot of times you're going through concussion protocol. It's very limited steps and what you're even allowed to do leading up to it. So for him to be able to knock down jump shots, to have that timing, that's the impressive part. Obviously, getting into the lane, finishing around the basket, those are things that, he's special and he can do those things, but to have the timing and the rhythm with his legs to knock down jumpers and to look really smooth doing it. I thought that was impressive with having the layoff that he did to still have that.
I mean, that was one of the greatest regular season weeks of Illinois basketball history we've ever seen, right? I mean, 3 straight top 25 road wins, and to win at Wisconsin and at Michigan without Io. We wondered, could this be a good thing for them long-term? And you saw Andre Curbelo elevate his game. DeMonte Williams elevate his game. Trent Frazier had one of his best games of his career at Michigan. What do you think the impact of that was, and what did you see out of them in those few games?
Yeah, I think we talked about having confidence in Io closing games. They got some confidence in we can close the game without him as well. So you hope it's foul trouble and not an injury, that would prevent him from playing here future. But he could get in foul trouble coming up. He could tweak something, and now you got to play a stretch without him. So now they have confidence that we can close out a game on the road against a top 25 team without him. That's what it is. Obviously, you want him out there. He's an incredible player. But to give this team some confidence to say, hey, he gets in some foul trouble or he's not out there, we can still extend the lead, right? We can maybe grow a lead. We can maybe finish a ball game or a half when he's not in there. And that'll help them out a lot. And, obviously one and done now the rest of the way with a Big Ten tournament and NCAA tournament. So just to have that mentality, if something doesn't go right in the middle of the game, to have that confidence, like, hey, we're going to turn it around. We can close this thing out no matter what's thrown our direction.
Do you have a comp for Andre Curbelo? Like, have you seen anybody that plays like him?
The one that pops into my head is Jay Williams, and Jason Williams, Sacramento Kings and Florida Gator Jay Williams. So just because of the way he handles the ball, I think you see those mixtapes of Jason Williams feeding, all those Kings teams and coming down the floor and behind the back. And those are things you just look for Curbelo to do in the middle of a game. You expect it almost. So I think the way that he plays, just loose and free. If he makes a mistake, he's going to come back and do, another great play. If he makes a great play, he's going to look to do another great play. So he just doesn't lack confidence. He doesn't get down, but he has that flair and maybe that style that you just you see in and one mixtapes maybe instead of out on the floor. And I think we saw that at Jason Williams, and you see out of Curbelo. It's how did he make that pass? Or he's stumbling on the floor and still finds the man, going to the basket. So he's fun to watch right now.
What does his emergence, Sean, do for this team?
Well, this year it gives you obviously another playmaker down the stretch. You're looking short term, but I think long term, you feel really good about their future. You've got a guy that the ball can be in their hands, and I'll admit right now, I was one that was saying, thank goodness Ayo and Kofi came back early in the season, because what would this team be without those two guys? And now you're kind of seeing, hey, they're going to be okay probably without those two guys. And does Kofi come back? Let's not worry about that right now, but you're seeing that, Curbelo is a guy that can have the ball in his hands, can make plays, can go and get you 20, but can also get you 10 assists. Adam Miller is a guy that we're seeing him start to develop now. He's not just a 3-point shooter. I love when half his shots come from inside the arc. Be dynamic, use that shot fake mid-range, get to the basket, use his strength. So I think out of those two guys, that helps them right now. There's another go-to scorer, but it also makes you feel pretty good about where the program is headed, that we've got some guys lined up here that continue this and kind of carry the torch, if you will, after Ayo passes it off.
Sean, most of us who watch it just see the finished product, right? We see what plays they make, when they make them, but there's a whole schematic thing going on behind the scenes with the coaching staff. What have you seen from them that has really helped this 11 wins and 12 game stretch?
Yeah, I think, the confidence on the defensive end has been one. I have not seen probably 80 minutes of basketball when you look at Wisconsin and Michigan, that intensity on the defensive end. So definitely the way that they're getting them to play on that defensive end with that effort and that energy. And I think offensively, they're really finding everybody's roles. And they've done a really good job of using Kofi, obviously posting up. That's where you want them, but feeding them from the top of the key. And I think that's so big with him, is because that's where you can't have help now. You don't focus on those weak side defenses coming over. If you can feed Kofi from the top of the key, it forces you to either front or play behind. If you play behind, he's going to bury him. If you front, you're going to throw over the top, and there's no weak side help there because it's just the baseline. And so then you start seeing guys from the corner potentially creeping in, and that's when you can get some of those skip passes to open shots in the corner, or guys now can drive baseline, and Kofi's got that big buried inside, and there's no help there as a rim protector. So I think utilizing Kofi, it's one thing to say, get him the basketball. That's obvious, right? Get him the basketball, but how do you get him the basketball? And they're doing a really good job right now, feeding him from the top of the key, but also then letting him set some ball screens at top and then diving. So now that big has to either hold for a second and get back, or the big stays back, and now that guard has free reign kind of at the top because there's no big helping. So I think that's the obvious thing. Get Kofi the ball, but how they're getting him the ball has really helped this offense here as of late.
From the outside, Sean, it also feels like Brad is pushing the right buttons when it comes to motivation. And I know we've spent a lot of time talking about the Michigan thing, right? Like they're ducking or whatever. Feels like Brad used that, right, to really motivate his team. And now the whole Big Ten championship thing, I think it gives him motivation going into the Big Ten tournament. How much does that stuff matter? Like when a coach pushes buttons, because even early in the season, right, he said, Luka Garza is the best player in the country. And then Ayo just elevated his game. It seems like that stuff has mattered for this team.
For sure. Yeah. And that's where the coach really comes into play is, can you push the buttons of your players individually? How do you get the most out of them individually? And then also as a team, what's that motivation out there? And, right now it's win the Big Ten. Let's prove you're the best Big Ten team. And there's the controversy out there right now. Is it a share? Is it outright? Did you get cheated out of a title a little bit? And, I really felt that way relating back to my senior year. And it was Wisconsin wins the Big Ten. We lose by 1 game. It's the second to last game up at their place, and we lose on a free throw by Devin Harris. Not that I remember all the details. It doesn't stick in my head 17 years later that we lost by 1 point for a Big Ten championship. But we've really believed that year we were the best team. And, this happened. Obviously, COVID's a whole nother animal. But because there's so many teams in the Big Ten, there's unbalanced schedules. And that year was an unbalanced schedule. We had a more difficult schedule than Wisconsin, and we lost by 1 game in the standings. So we really felt if they had the schedule we had, they would have dropped another game. We might have not have lost their game. We would have been the outright champs. So we took that to the Big Ten. We said, we're going to prove here now that we are the best team in the Big Ten. So it's a similar situation this year. It's unfortunate, right? Things happen. You wish Michigan would have played all their games. It's possible Michigan would have won them all. You look at who it was. It was home against Indiana. They're really struggling. At Northwestern, at Penn State, probably games Michigan wins, but you never know, right? And so that's the frustrating thing. So if they had played all those games and won all 3 of them, which is not a stretch, they would be the outright Big Ten championship. But for them to drop one of those games is a very good possibility the way this season has gone, and at least you get a share that way. So, carry that into the Big Ten tournament a little bit. And hey, it's winner take all now. Kind of prove that you are the best team. You're the last one standing.
Yeah, and it does feel like there's a chip on the shoulder of like Illini supporters right now. And I think it's going to come out again tomorrow or Tuesday, Sean, as the national or the Big Ten player of the year is announced. And I think it's going to be Luka Garza. I do. And he's deserving of it. But Io is too. And maybe missing some games hurts him. But what do you think? Like, these are 2 of the best players the Big Ten has had in a while here. Like, how do you make that decision? I'm glad I didn't have to vote in it this year.
And both players have a really strong case, and whoever gets it deserves it. No one is slighted. It's just unfortunate that these 2 collided at the exact same time, because it's a no-brainer any other year. If I'm voting, I am always a true believer that team success also has a factor in individual awards. And this year, nobody on Michigan is deserved of the player of the year. So you kind of look at who are those next teams. And so we've got 2 candidates here that it's obvious. It's one or the other. So it's head to head. Illinois won the matchup. Standings wise, Illinois won the matchup. You start to look at statistics, you can break it down all day. Obviously, Garza's got the rebounds. Isle's got the assists, right? Isle's got the steals. Garza, has a little bit of the points. So you're starting to look at, all the little stats. It's not that different. Right. So then I'm also going to look at it as, did Io close out games almost all the time? Yes, he did. So when I start looking at it, Garza is just as important to Iowa as Io is to Illinois. But I want a player that's going to make plays, clutch at the end of games. And did his team finish ahead of the standings? We're nitpicking. They both deserve it. But those are my 2 factors that would separate it. And I would say his team did better, and he had the ball in his hands late in game situations and came through in the clutch every time. And I can't think of a time this year that he didn't come through in the clutch in a loss where so you're starting to pile that up. It was 3, 4, 5 times, in Big Ten games where he had the ball and they won. And to me, that's the deciding factor. But Garza wins it. He deserves it because his numbers are absolutely off the charts as well.
Yeah, I feel like I could make the metrics argument for Luka Garza, and I see him, and I love the progression he's made. It's all hard work for Luka Garza. But if you want to go like the anecdotal stuff and back it up with good numbers as well, I think they're both winning arguments. So that's why it's very, very difficult to do this. All right, going into the Big Ten tournament, those 2 teams are as hot as any. Purdue is as well going into this. And Illinois and Iowa could rematch here on Saturday. Just how do you look at Illinois' path here to a potential Big Ten tournament?
Yeah, obviously you like it. It's one of those. Iowa, it'd be a great matchup. Wieskamp's the huge question mark, right? Well, what's the deal with his situation there? I think he's their most dynamic wing. When you really look at it, he can do things that Bohannon can't. He can do things that the McCaffreys can't. He does things that Frederick can't do. So he's the one piece there that hurts Iowa if he's not playing. So, I haven't heard anything, but obviously NCAA tournament's probably more important for Iowa. If they can rest him, they get him healthy for that. I hope he's able to play, just because you never want to wish, any kind of injuries on players. And, Iowa has a chance to make a deep run if he's there. So just kind of looking at that is, if that's who they would play in the semis, if they're not full strength, you kind of like where Illinois is in that matchup. You have a guy in Kofi that can neutralize Garza a little bit on the inside. Obviously, you get into trouble when he picks and pops. When he steps out and knocks down threes, it's tough for Kofi sometimes to get out there and guard that. But you have the physical body to match up against Garza in there. And then the way that they've been playing on the perimeter, locking up teams, I like them getting to their guards to contest threes. And I think all eyes point to an Illinois-Michigan matchup. I think it's what everybody wants to see. I think it'd be great, drama for TV. It is the two best teams in the Big Ten. They've proven that. Michigan had a couple stretches in there too that were very impressive when they came off the COVID pause. Going to Wisconsin, going to Ohio State. I think Iowa at home was thrown in there as well in that little mix. So, I mean, really, really impressive on their end too. It's the two best teams. You'd love to see them play again on a neutral court and kind of lay it all on the line there for a Big Ten championship.
Sean, you've been a part of some big, good teams getting into the postseason and making runs into the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. How do you feel this team's entering that, their mind space, and just the talent and the cohesion they have?
They're playing as good as anybody in the country right now. It's the perfect time to head into an NCAA tournament. They're playing well. We talk about it all the time. It's all about matchups, and it's who your draw. Is there a team out there that can give you problems? Maybe they fixed it after the Michigan State game, but obviously a physical team, they didn't respond very well in that game. So a physical team out there, could they pop them in the mouth a little bit and not like it? And that could give them problems. They struggle with a versatile five-man, a Liddell type player where, they can step out, knock down shots and stretch the defense. So is there a team out there that has a player like that can give you fits? But overall, before you know the matchups, before you see it, this team's playing as good as anybody. You've got two go-to players you feel like you can go to. Ayo on the perimeter. You got Kofi on the inside. It's a tough matchup. You really have to focus in on one of those guys. You can't take them both out in the same scouting report. You really have to mix it up and take one out and let the other one kind of run free a little bit. So I like their dynamic. They're guarding. They can score. You got to win 6 games. You got to be able to score the basketball. They can do that. And then you have to be able to lock up when you have that little segment. You're going to struggle scoring at times. It happens in an NCAA tournament. Can you get through that struggle with your defense? And they've proven that they can do that right now. So I like it. You feel good that they can make an Elite Eight, Final Four type run. They've got all the horses to do that.
Sean, I want you to take off like your unbiased analyst hat here and put on your alumni hat. What's this been like for you to watch?
It's a lot of fun. And, when you play at the university, you have a pride in the university, right? And so you want to see the team do well. But, I was very fortunate. I got to play there and coach there. And so I love the fan base. And so, I love the community. The Champaign-Urbana community is a wonderful place. And they love their basketball. And so, I feel good for them. I feel good, you never have the feeling you do as a player. Watching the game, you're excited for them, but the highs of a player can never be touched. So, it's fun to watch the team, but I find joy in, this community deserves it. And, there's a lot of good people in the area that really, bleed orange and blue. And so it's been a lot of fun. I know a lot of people are excited. I get text messages, calls, Facebooks, whatever it is, that people are just excited and happy to watch this team. And that feels good for that community in Champaign.
So when the NCAA tournament obviously going to be very different this year, though, 20% fans potentially here. What is different when you step on that court, even if you're a 1 against a 16, or really when you get to, which we think they're going to get to, the second weekend, Sean, where you're going up against, maybe it's West Virginia or Florida State or some team like that. How is that different than, say, what they're playing right now, even against number 2 Michigan?
Yeah, and I don't even know how to explain it. It's a feeling. It is a different feeling when you step on that court. I don't know if it's because of, the blue that they have around the outside and but there's a feeling that this is the NCAA tournament. And it'll be interesting to see how is that this year, obviously, with it all being kind of in a few locations there in Indy, limited fans, so it's going to have a different vibe. It's going to have a different kind of feel to it. But I guess magical maybe is kind of I don't know how to describe, but you step on the court, it's the NCAA tournament. It's different than any other game. A few games have that throughout the year. The bragging rights is one of those that it just has a different feel because of that atmosphere. But a Big Ten game is a Big Ten game. A road game's a road game. You get really comfortable at home. But when you step on the court for an NCAA game, it has a different feeling to it. How do you adjust to that? How do you let some of those nerves set in? And sometimes, the majority of the time, I got nervous before every game. Every single game you get nervous. And a big game, it maybe stays with you until tip or maybe even the first possession or two. Most games, it's gone by those final warm-ups that you're taking. You're just ready to go. But a big-time game with a lot riding on it, you feel that into the tip. And the NCAA, that lingers a little bit. And then when that crowd that's a neutral crowd starts kind of cheering for one team or the other, or you feel an upset kind of coming on, there's a buzz in the air that's different in the NCAA tournament. And you have to experience it to really feel it. And, and that's the one thing with this team we talked about. They have not been there. They have not experienced it. So maybe this setup is good for this team because it may feel different and it feels different to everybody. So nobody played in it last year. So it's going to be hard to find teams that have a lot of guys that have a lot of NCAA experience because now we're 2 years removed from anyone being in it. But nobody's played in this atmosphere before. So nobody has an advantage in a team like Illinois who has no players on the roster that have played in it. Maybe it's a little bit of an advantage that they don't have to go through the feelings that somebody else already has experienced in the previous years.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up, Sean. None of these guys have played in the NCAA tournament, even though they deserved it last year. Yeah. But don't you still have a confidence because Io DeSumo was on the team? We just assume he's not human when it comes to these kind of things, and that he just steps up in the biggest moments, and that given everything he's had to this point, he's going to have more.
Yeah, you would think, and that's why players are special, and the really good ones show up every night, and that's just what happens. And your Big Ten players of the year, they show up every night. Your first team All-Americans, they show up every night. And it doesn't matter if it's home or away. It doesn't matter if it's Big Ten tournament. It doesn't matter if it's NCAA. They're going to find a way to get the stats that they get. Io has that making. He's shown it all year. You expect him to come out and really play with confidence as well.
And obviously it takes a team, Sean. This is my last question for you, to get here and to be this good. And this team isn't nearly as good without Kofi in the middle and all the attention he draws. But you've played with some of the greats, Frank Williams, Brian Cook, D. Brown, Darren Williams. This individual season, is this the best Illinois individual season you've seen from Io DeSumo?
It might be. That's hard. We're talking about different generations.
Right.
I played with Frank, and Frank was electric. It was just, it was another level. And he did things that we didn't see before. And, just YouTube the Frank Williams Show Iowa game. And, right then and there, you're going to see 4 or 5 plays, not disrespecting Io, but he hasn't done it yet. You're going to see 3 or 4 or 5 plays in that game alone that we have not seen. So, Io is up there. He is up there with the Illini greats. It's really difficult to say, is this the best individual season? Because, like I said, I played with one of the best in Frank, and I would put him up there with anybody. And like I said, have some fun and go YouTube for the people that haven't seen the Frank Williams Show against Iowa, and you're going to see plays in there that you've never seen made on the basketball court. And he was special. And obviously, D and Darren were special players. They were freshmen my senior year, so we hadn't seen the best of them. I was, loved playing with Frank and Corey Bradford, and I'm thinking I'm finally going to get a little break in practice. I don't have to guard All-Americans, and then Coach Self brings in D and Darren, so then I have to guard those guys. So
was Frank the toughest? So be honest, was Frank the toughest?
All the time, because whenever he wanted to, he just did whatever he wanted to do, and that's the difference. There is, Frank could take over a game defensively. He could take a game over passing the basketball. He could take the game over scoring the basketball. Io can do that as well. And so that's when you start comparing the two, it's hard to say, who had a better individual season, because Frank's was special.
Yeah. And I think they're both going to end up first round picks in the NBA draft after their junior season. So definitely a good comparison there. Sean, man, it's March Madness. We're going to have it this year. Hopefully it goes all well. But man, it is so exciting. So great to catch up with you. Thanks for the time, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.